Go to TAPgiles.com to learn dreams, engage my services, and support the channel. Someone was asking how to have an object like explode if it hits the wall straight on, but bounce off if it's kind of glancing ricochet like that. So this particular object just like bounces and stuff unless it actually explodes, and then it explodes after some time, I believe. There you go. Cool. So I've got this area with the label scenery so that we can limit this to just bouncing off of scenery or something. And I'll make a ball that can bounce. So I'll make a sphere and then give it a chip with all our stuff in it. So we'll scope that in like that. And now we have a chip, and we can link this to the group. So if we scope out and we have this tweak menu open, we can tell it what object to apply to, which means followers and movers and destroyers and stuff will all apply and affect this object. But I'm going to put this down in the center there. You can still see it though if you turn on X-ray. You can see the gadgets and stuff behind other objects, like there's something over there. And I'll just make it red so that we can see a bit better on the background. So this is going to bounce around. So if we make this bouncy and make the group movable, now it will fall and bounce around from gravity, which is cool. And after some time, we want it to explode and destroy itself. So if we get a explosion from media molecule, and don't need the grid, then we can emit that explosion with an emitter, and we'll destroy it after a few seconds, and we'll emit it once. So if we just we need to link it, so object to emit that, and we want to emit it around the ball, have no speed, and now when it explodes it'll do that effect. And we also want it to destroy itself, so we'll have that. We'll just have a destroyer in there, and now it will destroy itself and emit that object, and then that object will destroy itself as well. But we want that to happen like after some time. So I'm going to have a node, which is just, I'll set it to no ports because we don't need it to have signals coming in from the outside or going outside. We just need it inside here. So a node just takes a wire and passes it through to something else, but it's good for organization. It can save you having like lots of wires to lots of things. You can wire it all into here to trigger the same thing. So this will trigger the destruction and the emitter, and we'll just have a timer to trigger that after some time, and we can set how long that is in here. So after 5 seconds it will bounce around for a bit. After 5 seconds it will destroy itself. There we go. Cool. So that will trigger it, but we also want to trigger it if it hits scenery. So we'll have an impact sensor, and when it bumps something, then we'll also trigger this stuff. So now when it hits the ground, it will blow up. So let's have a emitter that will emit that ball in that direction with some speed, a bit more speed. Okay, so when it hits the wall, it explodes. But I want it so that if it would kind of ricochet off of here instead of, it's not very straight on. When it hits it straight on, I want it to explode. When it kind of bounces off at an angle like this, it should just like bounce off and keep rolling around, which could be kind of cool. So I'm going to first set up so that we can press a button to shoot this in any direction we want, with the grid and with a imp tracker. So we'll put that emitter in here. There we go. And then move this so that it emits from the tip of the imp. And I'll open the tweak menu so I can see the preview of it. Turn off X-ray so that we can get to the actual emitter gizmo, and then press triangle to snap that to the grid. And now we can put that at the exact point on the tip of the imp. There we go. So now we can just like point around and new balls will appear, but it's kind of got a funny angle. We want it, when we point over there, we want it to launch it in that direction. So if you tweak the imp tracker, you can put it into gun style mode, which will kind of aim it a bit more sensibly. And then I'll have a controller sensor, so I can just press R1 or something to have it emit. So we've got control sensor in remote controllable mode, and then R1 will power it, and it'll emit to one thing, one ball. We can use square instead. So now I can just emit them around the place just fine. So now we can do stuff like, let's move over here and fire one in that direction, and we want to see if it ricochets around. We want to kind of compare the direction this object is going with the orientation of the surface it's going to hit. So we can get the surface it's going to hit using a laser scope, like that, and that's in the center as well because that's where the chip is. So we can have that pointing forwards, but we want to keep this whole ball pointing in the same direction as it's moving so that the laser scope is always pointing in front of it. Like if I copied this and turned it on, and then tweaked the laser scope so we can see it, then as it kind of falls around, we'll turn the destroyer and stuff off. As it bounces around, the laser scope isn't pointing in the same direction. We want it to point in the direction it's moving at all times. So if we add into here a rocket rotator, this means it will rotate this object so that the arrow points in the direction the object is moving. So if we do that, then it's trying to like rotate it around. Let's give it more strength and damping and speed. So it's going to point down and then up because it's bouncing on the spot. So let's just put that into our real one. Now when this object gets close to something and the laser scope picks it up, so I'll just make it longer so you can see, we're actually getting this green arrow. This green arrow is the direction that surface is pointing. It's pointing in that direction. And then if we point it at a different side, it's pointing in this direction. So we want to compare that direction with the direction the ball is moving. So we've got that one from this output, hit surface orientation. That's what that green arrow represents. But how do we get the direction the ball is moving? Because this ball is angled in the direction it's moving, it makes it a bit easier. So we can use the movement sensor and then turn on local space. And then it's got these axes, these arrows. So if we make one of those arrows point in the direction we want it that we know it's going, it's always going to be going in that direction. Now we have the X direction, and we've got the X direction coming out of here. So we can use that with our maths and stuff to compare them. Cool, so we've got the direction it's moving from this X, and we've got the direction of the surface from the laser scope hit surface orientation. And now we want to do some maths to it. So I'll do the maths and then I'll explain what it does. This is getting the dot product. It's a good way of telling how similar the angles of two directions is, sort of thing. First we multiply them together. So multiply that with the X, multiply, and then we and that will multiply the different axes together like one by one, and then we split that to get the separate axes that have been multiplied, and then we add them all up, or in this case we're going to use the trick where you wire them all into the same thing and use L1 and X to use the blend mode, which averages these, so it like adds them up and divides by 3, and then we multiply by 3 to get back to the total of these 3 wires. And that is the dot product. So I'm going to make another copy to demonstrate what that's giving us, and have a displayer so we can see what the dot product is. So again, we've got the arrow, you're getting the dot product of this arrow and this direction. So right now they're like polar opposites, so it's close to -1. And then as we like rotate around, now the direction of this is meant to be moving, and the orientation of the wall is getting more different. And then more and more different, until it's like almost glancing off like that. So it gets closer to 0, and as it's a polar opposite to each other, then it's -1. And if they were pointing in the same direction, like both pointing in that direction, then it would be +1. So now we've got an arrow pointing that way, dot product with an arrow pointing that way, and we're getting close to 1. And that's basically how it works. So we can use that now to, if it's close to -1, then we are dead on to the wall. So let's just do a check first. Let's, if it's if it's less than 0.7, minus 0.7, then we'll just display something. Okay. Yeah, and I'll display it like next to the actual thing. Okay, and we'll turn the impact sensor off and stuff. So these are all the points where it thinks it should explode, and when it's like glancing off like this, it doesn't say that, it doesn't show that thing, and then it set it down there because it was more dead on to the wall. So we can have that trigger this stuff as well. So if this laser scope was longer, it would be saying that a lot more often, because before it even gets there, it's saying, oh, we're going to hit dead on, but we don't want that to trigger, we want it to trigger when we actually get there and we impact. Yeah, if we impact and we are dead on, so we get an AND gate. Let's just put all this stuff in a chip actually, to tidy it up a bit. Oh. And now we can have a node like we did before, but this one will be going outside like this, and we can see that and wire that into stuff. If we're dead on and we're impacting, then we'll blow up. So this won't work, but it's the next step in the process. So, okay, so it's like finding that it should blow up when we get there, but then it's not blowing up when we get there, because when it impacts, now it's got a new trajectory. Now it's like pointing over there, and we're nowhere near to that other wall, so it's not finding that we should blow up. We want it to kind of use the previous frame that we had of whether it should blow up or not. So we can kind of delay this by just having a calculator, wire that in there, and then wire that into B. So it will go into A, and this will always be the current value of whether we should blow up or not. And then it will wire it into here. This will be the previous frame's value of whether we should blow up or not. Then we use B instead of straight from the chip. So it's exploding when it's dead on, and then when it's glancing off, it doesn't explode, yay! And just explodes there. And that's how to do that. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something interesting. Go to patreon.com/TAPgiles to learn something new every day.